Moon.
Here.
Munsell.
Here.
Nichols. Peters. Rhodes. Swan.
Here.
Swearingen. Walton Gray.
We have 15 present, we need 14, so we do have a quorum. I now move into executive session. I move that House Bill 1100 be voted do pass. Is there any discussion? We have submitted a committee substitute for House Bills 1100 and 1421. So I now move that House Bills 1100 and 1421, the committee substitute, be do pass, and I move for its adoption. Discussion. Yes. Representative.
Just a quick question. As far as the House Committee substitute, is it just to roll these two bills in together, or were there other changes made as well?
There was, they were rolled together. There was the two changes that were made to the language was related to Representative Fraker's food preparation bill, and the change was to change the requirement that the not-for-profits have a sign-up to be a may, that they may have to notify the department that they also may have to put up a sign. Also, the exemption for St. Louis was removed. That was something that had begun in the Senate. In the House, we never really, that was not a position on the House side. If that's something that has to be done in the Senate later on down the road, that may be something that has to be done. But at this time, the bill is kind of taken back to a very clean form, very standard form, and so those were the two changes.
I thought that was the case, but I just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Correct. There's no exemptions. Okay. The motion has been made. We'll now we'll make a voice vote. All in favor of adopting the substitute for House Bills 1100 and 1421, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Okay, the ayes do have it. You have adopted it by a voice vote. Now we will now all in favor. We will now move that the House Committee substitute for House Bills 1100 and 1421 be voted do pass. This will be a roll call vote. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Representative Burleson.
Aye.
Representative Elmer.
Aye.
Allen.
Aye.
Anderson.
Aye.
Barr. Brown. Carpenter. Cornejo.
Aye.
Fraker.
Aye.
Frame.
Aye.
Franklin. Frederick. Henson. Keeney. Cracky.
No.
Lamb. Lichtenegger.
Aye.
Mayfield. McCann-Beatty.
No.
Moon.
Aye.
Munsell.
Aye.
Nichols. Peters. Rhodes. Swan.
Aye.
Swearingen. Walton Gray.
By your vote of 11 yes and 4 no, you have passed the two bills. We'll now move out of executive session and into our hearing. We'll now hear testimony and hearing on House Bill 1265 by Representative Cornejo. Before we get started, how many people here testify in favor of the bill? And how many testify against the bill? All right. Should be very short. Whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, my name is Robert Cornejo, State Representative for District 64, Northern St. Charles County, Southeastern Lincoln County. House Bill 1265 was a bill that was introduced last year by Representative Swearingen. Was heard in hearing committee, and it was part of an omnibus bill that was passed out of the House last year. I believe the language was stripped out in committee, so therefore we're back here this year. The way the bill's been presented is that it's meant to try to correct some language. It was originally passed in 2007. The statute as it's currently written does not include the list of professions that need to be included for the statute to make sense grammatically as an appropriate reference to make the statute complete. So it has the section has the purpose of preventing governmental entities from state to local governments from discriminating against licensed professional counselors when they write regulations or policies. It's supposed to prevent governmental entities from discriminating between LPCs and other mental health professionals, but the reference to other professions was not included in the original. The House bill simply adds a reference to other mental health professionals listed, and those professions are listed there as mental health professional, psychiatrist, resident in psychiatry, psychologist, psychiatric nurse, licensed professional counselor, or psychiatric social worker. Just to give the committee a heads up, before I walked in here today, I had a couple discussions with a couple different groups that were wanting to offer a committee substitute that took out the language that's currently proposed. If you go where it's underlined and take out the language that says "or" as defined in section 632.005 and add in another section, I believe, I have it off the top of my head, I believe it's 370, and I believe the person here to testify in favor of it can give you, double check and verify that information. Then I'll take any questions, but like I said, somebody here from the Missouri Mental Health Counselors Association is also here to testify in support, and to be honest with you, probably be a little bit better reference than me.
Are you finished with your testimony? Okay. Questions? Representative Lichtenegger. Proceed.
Just out of curiosity, do you know why there's a $3 million and up fiscal note on this? I mean, you're just...
Yeah. I'm glad you asked, and I know politicians love statistics, so Dan's going to be able to provide you a whole lot of statistics, but we're actually going to challenge the fiscal note on that.
Because it's not like you've got two people with you. You just got one person. So you shouldn't...
And I think the thought was that, currently right now Group A, I'm just putting it generically, Group A can evaluate people and get reimbursed for it. And so I guess the thought behind the fiscal note was now if we open up Group B to also allow and be reimbursed for this, that it's magically going to allow all these more reimbursements. When in reality, I think people that were originally being seen by Group A will now kind of filter over into Group B, and Group B has a lower cost. So in reality, I think it's going to be a wash or maybe even a positive fiscal note because
right, that's what I was thinking.
It's going to be cheaper services. So again, we are going to challenge the fiscal note on this.
Thank you.
That is an interesting subject. That very much the reason why we have certificate of necessity laws in the state, because when you have a payer, when you have a dedicated payer, if a hospital, or in this case, if you add other medical providers into the industry, to expand those medical providers, they do have the ability to expand the demand because the demand is not static. So that may be why the fiscal note is there. Are there any further questions? Representative Allen. Question?
Just a comment, Mr. Chairman. And I've had in the past few years issues that were brought up with adding the category of provider. And what I believe I saw was just that automatic response that there was going to be a cost. I would hope that referrals and use, but referrals of professionals would not change and be more inappropriate, add more people on beyond what is really needed. And if indeed, and I don't know, so I guess a question, do you know if there are areas of the state that there is a shortage of people providing any of these services?
That I do not know. I mean, I know at least in my area, I don't think there's a huge shortage, but again, I kind of live in one of a populated area. I don't know maybe if the rural areas are underserved or not.
That would be something this could help, but I think that challenging that fiscal note is a very smart move. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions for this witness? Oh, Representative Franklin.
To inquire.
Proceed.
Good afternoon, or the afternoon point here. So with the adoption of this language, does the ability to diagnose and be paid and the scope of practice change?
From my understanding, no. It's just going to allow people to, I think the main gist is let them be reimbursed or evaluated, what they're already allowed to evaluate.
So the purpose of this is to, what is the purpose of this for then?
It basically stops discriminating, policies being written to discriminate such as being reimbursed for services.
Who's discriminating?
State agencies.
State agencies are
Like
discriminating
Health Net.
because of a grammatical error in the language? Is that the contention?
That's my understanding, is that the current language still allows them to discriminate. And so, I forget, the people under 337 are allowed to be reimbursed while others are not.
Well,
Right. The current language says that they're, Representative Franklin, the current language basically says that they're not supposed to discriminate, but then it doesn't really say with whom they can. So, if that makes sense.
isn't that outlined under their scope of practice?
Well, I guess.
I think that's what's getting at. May I continue?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. So this bill was sponsored in 2007 by Representative Cooper, who is my predecessor. And this interesting note that we got from Dan Bolden's house, is that right? He's going to testify for you. That says that there was kind of a grammatical error at the time. And I checked with, of course, Dr. Cooper just spoke with him today about that. Did an error occur? Was there something that you needed to correct as the process went through and followed the bill, all the way through then, and saw that there were not any amendments made onto it or any changes made to it. So I guess I would just call into question whether this is about changing the scope of practice and being reimbursed and increasing the ability to diagnose, or is it about a grammatical error?
Yeah, I mean, if you recall last year, I sponsored the bill to diagnose, and that was not my intention this year. So, I mean, the way that it was presented.
I understand it's not your best, yeah. I understand. But the impact of this would be very, very, whether it's just kind of the toe, in the door, or what is this? What is the real purpose of this? If there's nothing to correct grammatically, then what is the real intent? Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions? Yes, Representative Owen.
Inquire.
Proceed.
As it's written right now, before these changes are implementing, it refers to you cannot discriminate against the stuff under individuals who are covered under 337.500 through 540. And looking at the statute, that has to deal with professional counseling. The section that you've got added in there, 632.005, are comprehensive psychiatric services, which seems like it's much broader than a lot of other stuff. And I'm trying to understand what it is that we're trying to expand this to and who is being prejudiced against, because right now it looks like it's pretty narrow. It's just licensed counselors that are covered underneath this. I mean, if we're going to broaden this out, who else are we trying to cover this or prevent this prejudice against?
It's other mental health professionals, such as the mental health counselors.
So it's not, that's something different than just counselors then, correct?
That's my understanding.
Okay. Thank you.
Are there any further questions? Seeing none, I believe we're ready for your first witness.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Dan Bolden, Executive Director of the Missouri Mental Health Counselors Association. We represent licensed professional counselors that practice throughout the state. Many of them are providers for Mo Health Net. And this, to go back to some of the questions that have been raised, this bill really is a correction. When Representative Cooper worked with us to pass this in 2007, we basically copied a statute language that was already in law in the section covering psychologists. And it said government bodies can't discriminate between psychologists and the medical profession, between those two groups. When we drafted the bill, we didn't include the reference to the medical section. So basically this statute was written and we just didn't catch it when it went through committee. It says government bodies can't discriminate between licensed counselors, and there's no reference, there's nothing there. So we simply see it as a grammatical fix. It doesn't have anything to do with changing our scope of practice or what counselors can already do. It just gives a reference to that government can't discriminate between our group and another group of mental health professionals. And the language on the reference that was in statute came out of the legislative research last year, but we're quite, what we want to get through is not have government bodies able to discriminate between what counselors can do and what other mental health professions listed under Section 337, the psychologists, social workers, marriage and family therapists. So that's the basic intent. And as an example, when we talk about government bodies discriminating, the Mo Health Net currently does discriminate against both professional counselors and clinical social workers when it comes to provision of mental health services to adults. They will reimburse psychologists, psychiatrists, advanced practice nurses for services, for therapy services provided to adults, but they won't reimburse clinical social workers or professional counselors. So this, we want to make it clear that when it comes to discrimination of that nature, it ought to be prohibited. Representative Lichtenegger too had a question about the fiscal year, and again we see the numbers that are included there is just wildly inaccurate. They basically, in their assumption, they say that in their billing statistics, psychologists bill 64% of their bills are for adult services. So then they say, they make the assumption then that if counselors are able to see adults, that all of a sudden, we're going to be billing 64% of our services for adults. And then they apply that to a dollar figure of what we're currently reimbursed for children's services, and come up with the figures they do. But it just really wouldn't work that way. Counselors that are currently already providing services for children are not going to immediately drop those children that they're serving and fill those available slots with adult receivers of Medicaid start billing for them. It just wouldn't happen that way. As a matter of fact, the numbers I've received from Mobile Health Net is there's currently in the neighborhood of roughly 6,000 adults that receive mental health treatment services, and 98% of those therapy services are provided by psychologists who bill at a rate of $60 an hour to Mobile Health Net. If licensed counselors were able to treat adults and serve them, presumably some of that 6,000 numbers would choose a counselor as perhaps more convenient or more compatible with them to serve in. For each time that happened, it would be a savings of $12 an hour, because the reimbursement rate for counselors is $12 less than it is for psychologists. We see that there'd be some savings to this bill. There may potentially be some more adults served that aren't able to locate services now. If they have to see only a psychologist, there may be more availability of counselors. So it's hard to say how many that would be, but it would probably be a wash between the increase in services with the savings that are made for counselors treating them instead of psychologists. So if you have any other questions, I would be happy to answer those.
Representative Elmer.
If I understand, you're here on behalf of professional counselors, right?
Correct.
And what you guys are seeking is you're wanting reimbursement for certain services from Mo Health, correct?
We currently receive reimbursement from Mobile Health Net for children services up to age 21. So we are currently actually LPCs represent the largest group of Mobile Health Net providers in the state. There's some 1,600.
That's for children, but this you're wanting to include adults also?
We would like the Department of Social Services not to discriminate against counselors for adult services, correct?
Okay. So if you guys come underneath that, I mean, there's going to be additional services available to these people out there. Would you agree with that?
It would be the same service. It may be that the additional providers available to them. They would have another choice.
So at the end of the day, it looks to me like you guys are going, there would be more, so it stands to reason Mo Health would pay more. I mean, this is going to be an expansion of what's going to be outgoing, so there would be a fiscal note at the end of this, I would think. Wouldn't you agree?
Potentially, but it depends on how many more people than the 6,000 that are currently being, how many more adults than the 6,000 that are currently being served would be seeking services. And I don't know what that number is, but presumably maybe there's more than 6,000 people that need mental health treatment. Some of them aren't able to get it because they can't find a psychologist to treat them.
Well, and I'm looking at the statutory reference you got here, it's Chapter 632. That's a pretty broad psychiatric comprehensive thing. And I mean, they've got everything under the sun listed there. So it really looks to me like this would really broaden out and give you guys standing to say, Mo Health, you need to pay me for X, Y, and Z, when I don't know that that's really the intent of what we want to do here.
No, that's really not what this is saying. It's just taking a section out of that statute that defines mental health professionals and that lists those other professions. We're actually fine in substituting reference to Section 337, which just covers psychologists, social workers, counselors, marriage and family therapists. So we don't necessarily need to wed this language to that comprehensive psychiatric service definition. But it's not changing our scope. It's not changing our practice. It's not changing what counselors already do. We provide assessment. We provide treatment. We would continue to do that just as we do today. So there's no change in what we're doing. It's just saying government bodies can't discriminate against our group and one of these other groups.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions for this witness? I do have a question. So what this, and this may be answered by the bill sponsor or by you, but at the end of the day, if we pass this, would the department be able to discriminate against the other professions? So while your profession, they would have to use your profession, but they they would not be required to use the other professions. Is that correct?
Correct. This just refers to professional counselors. Actually, licensed clinical social workers and marriage and family therapists have a similar statute to this one that they would need to correct as well. Their statutes have the same flaw as the counselors do, but this bill just refers to professional counselors.
Okay. Representative Munsell. Proceed.
Just a real quick question. Do you know if there was a situation where a person came before a court of law and the judge was trying to make a ruling, would he make a ruling based upon a counselor's diagnosis as to what they're going to do with this person
I'm not sure on that. I think that, if there was say a malpractice suit against a counselor, it would be for whatever the person alleged malpractice was.
No, not necessarily against the counselor, but if there was an individual where a judge was trying to, I'm just trying to create a scenario here, was trying to decide, make a ruling on this particular person, and he wanted to probably get an analysis of what, the conditions of this person. Would he take the counselor's diagnosis, or would he rather take a psychiatrist's?
I'm sure that would be up to a judge, but certainly a counselor would provide a diagnosis in their treatment plan that was being contested in court, so the judge may have some issue with the counselor's diagnosis. Could be.
Okay, thank you.
Just want to recognize our ex officio member, Representative Corman, who joins our committee today. He's enthralled. This is an issue that I know that he's very interested in, enthralled, and he just couldn't help himself. Are there any other questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Holdinghouse. Is there anyone else who wishes to testify in favor of House Bill 1265? Seeing none, is there anyone here who wishes to testify against House Bill 1265? Seeing none, is there anyone who wishes to testify for informational purposes only on House Bill 1265? Seeing none, that closes the hearing on House Bill 1265. Thank you, Representative Cornado.
Thank you.
That ends the hearing of bills for today. For the committee's information, next week I do intend to hear both House Bills 1481 and 1491. I also have a bill that I'm working on that I would like to let the committee know about. You're welcome to come by my office. It's basically established a framework around the very issues of the committee that we establish. It doesn't change anything in law relating to those committees. It just says, it defines what a licensure law is, what a certification is, and what a registration is, because those are not actually defined in statute. So I welcome you to come to my office, or anytime, please seek me out, and I'm happy to give you language for that bill. And if you choose to do so, I would welcome your co-sponsor on that bill. Are there any questions for me before we adjourn? Seeing none, the meeting is adjourned.